If you wanted to start your own record label in 1924, I would suggest buying a whole bunch of records and some paste. We have a rare pasteover label today on the 78 RPM channel. Hello, and welcome to the 78 RPM channel. Whether you're new to 78s or an advanced collector, this is your source for information, research, and music about 78 RPM records, cylinders, and radio transcriptions. One thing you should always keep in mind when you're out looking for records, when you're junking records, or even going through records in shops, keep an eye out for records on labels you have never seen. Today we're going to look at a label I was not familiar with. In 1924, Nathan Glantz and his orchestra entered the studio and they produced Broadway 11376. Now, there is an Epps Hotel Astor Orchestra waltz, I think, on the other side. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the Nathan Glantz side. It was released not only on Broadway, but it was also released on Triangle and Carnival. The Broadway copy is going to be tough enough to find, although you could probably do it with a little bit of searching. The version on Carnival is going to be really tough to find. In fact, I would probably assume that's going to take between a couple and maybe 10 years to find if you're looking for a specific record on Carnival, and that involves querying a whole bunch of established collectors, because even most established collectors don't have a lot of stuff on Carnival. The version on the Triangle label, probably somewhere in between. There were, however, even smaller record companies that released discs in the 1920s, and a lot of times they did it through a process called pasteovers. Now, a pasteover record is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A company would purchase discs in bulk from another company. This was usually Columbia, and they would simply have labels with their own company name and information printed. That label would be literally pasted over the Columbia label. Finding pasteover labels is not difficult. Trying to find specific pasteover labels might take you years or even decades. That leads us back to our copy of Broadway 11376, because this copy is not actually on Broadway. It's on Harlem. This copy is interesting because most pasteover labels are just that. They pasted over the entire label. On this one, they did not. They simply printed up a strip that said Harlem, and they pasted over the word Broadway. After doing a lot of digging, I came up with zero information on this company. Alan Sutton briefly mentions this company in his book American Record Companies and Producers 1888 to 1950, but he only mentions them to the extent that he indicates a copy of a Broadway disc with a pasteover strip stating Harlem exists. As for data on the company, I have no idea. I don't even know if Harlem was in Harlem. I have no idea who had these little label strips printed up. I don't know who bought the paste. Going back a little deeper, I discovered that this company was actually mentioned in the American Record Label Image Encyclopedia, affectionately known as ARLI, but to my surprise, when I went to check out information on the company, there was none. There was no information about the company. It simply had one image of a Harlem label, and that image was this one. The disc sitting here is the exact same disc that was used in the late 20th century when images for the encyclopedia were being compiled. Now, one interesting note, this strip was clearly intended for use specifically on Broadway records. Notice the gold bands at the top and bottom of the word Harlem that match up with the gold stripes on the Broadway label. That was obviously done intentionally. Unfortunately, that is literally everything I know about the Harlem label. So if you have any information whatsoever, please let me know, because the information you have is probably relatively new and unknown information to the entire hobby. So if you have information, that's kind of a fun position to be in. You have data other people don't have, and stuff they're probably looking for. I wish I had more information for you, I just don't. If you would like to start your own 78 RPM record company and you're living in 1924, get yourself a printer, get yourself some labels, and get yourself some paste. In the meantime, keep an eye out for pasteover labels when you're out looking for records, especially the extremely rare and valuable ones, like this one, the extremely rare 78 RPM channel pasteover label. It's rare and it's valuable. We'll see you next time on the 78 RPM channel.